The morning Megan's life broke apart started with a child coughing in the next room and Brandon's work alarm vibrating in the dark. She reached across his sleeping body to silence the phone. And that was when she saw it. A message on the lock screen. From Nicole. Not just a friend. Her best friend. The woman who had been part of her life since childhood. The text read something so casual, so sickeningly comfortable, that it hit Megan harder than any scream ever could. Nicole was joking about angry pregnant women showing up on doorsteps, mocking the very belly that carried Brandon's third child. Megan's hand froze around the phone while her husband slept peacefully beside her, his breathing slow and even, as if nothing in the world was wrong. Everything had already been poisoned. Megan just had not seen how deep it spread. She and Brandon had been together since she was 20, and he was 23. 7 years of marriage, 2 kids already running through the hallways of their home, and a baby girl growing inside her at 7 months along. Brandon had been the kind of husband other women envied. He opened doors, remembered anniversaries, and never once raised his voice at her in front of the children. When the worst news of Megan's life arrived a year and a half ago, Brandon had been the one holding her together. That news came in the form of a diagnosis. Megan's father, the only parent she had left in this world, was told he had stage 3 pancreatic cancer. Her mother had passed away when Megan was just 14, taken suddenly by a brain aneurysm one Tuesday afternoon, while folding laundry. Since then, her father had been everything to her. He was the man who showed up to every school play, who taught her to change a tire in the rain, who gave bear hugs so tight they made every broken thing inside her feel whole again. When the doctors told them the treatments were no longer working about 4 months ago, when they said months and not years, something inside Megan cracked in a way she did not think could ever be repaired. Brandon had stepped up like a soldier. He told her to quit her job so she could spend more time with her father, while there was still time to spend. When they found out about the 3rd pregnancy shortly after, he reassured her again, saying the savings on daycare alone made it worth it. He rubbed her feet when they swelled, drove the kids to school when she was too exhausted to move, and whispered into her hair at night that everything was going to be okay. And Nicole had been right there beside them the whole time. Nicole, whose mother had grown up with Megan's mother. Nicole, who had been in every childhood photo, every birthday party, every holiday dinner for as long as memory stretched. When the updated prognosis came and Megan felt the ground dissolve beneath her, she drove straight to Nicole's house and collapsed into her arms and cried for hours, soaking through the shoulder of her shirt. Nicole held her and stroked her hair and told her she was not alone. That same Nicole was now sending flirtatious messages to Brandon's phone at 6 in the morning, and Brandon had rolled over and gone back to sleep as if none of it existed. Megan did not wake Brandon, not after what she had just seen, not after what she now knew. She took his phone and walked out of the bedroom with the silence of a woman who already knew that the life she had built was over. She sat down at the kitchen table, her pregnant belly pressing against the edge, and she scrolled through months of conversations between her husband and the woman she had trusted more than anyone on this earth. The messages went back far enough to make her stomach turn. There were logistics of secret meetings arranged during afternoons when Megan was visiting her father at the hospital. There were inside jokes about her, casual and cruel, tossed back and forth between 2 people who smiled in her face every single day. Nicole had called Brandon her brother at Thanksgiving dinner just weeks earlier, laughing while passing him the mashed potatoes, and Megan had thought nothing of it because why would she? These were the 2 people she had built her world around, and they had been hollowing it out from the inside like termites behind drywall. She sat there for 2 full hours clutching that phone, reading every word, and not a single tear fell. It was not sadness she felt in that moment. It was something colder, something that locked every joint in her body into place and sharpened every thought into a blade. Brandon had never come home late. He had never smelled like someone else's perfume. There had been no strange charges on credit cards, no locked screens, no nervous glances. He had been so careful, so thorough in covering his tracks, that Megan realized she never stood a chance at catching them through instinct alone. If that one alarm had not gone off, if her sick child had not woken her a few minutes early, she might have gone on believing the lie until the day it buried her. But she was awake now, and she was not going to waste it. Megan gave herself exactly 24 hours. One final day of peace, she told herself, before the storm she was about to unleash. She went through the motions of breakfast and cartoons and wiping her son's runny nose. And when Brandon finally woke up and kissed her on the forehead on his way out the door, she let him. She smiled, she waved, and the second his car disappeared down the street, she picked up her phone and made 3 calls. The first was to her OB/GYN, where she booked a same-day appointment and requested testing for every sexually transmitted disease and infection they could run. The nurse on the line hesitated for a moment, and Megan could hear the sympathy dripping through the receiver before a single result had come back. Most tests returned negative within the day, though a few required up to 2 weeks, and Megan made peace with the waiting because she had no other choice. The second call was to a divorce attorney her father's old colleague had recommended years ago for a completely different reason. Megan sat in that office the same afternoon with a folder thick enough to fill a briefcase. She brought every financial document she could find, including the wills left behind by both her mother and her father, bank statements, tax filings, and the kids' savings accounts. She also brought something she had no legal right to, but every moral right in the world to take. While Brandon was at work that morning, she had gone into his home office, opened the filing cabinet he kept locked with a small brass key he thought she did not know about, and pulled out every financial record he had stored inside. Pay stubs, investment statements, an insurance policy she had never seen before, all of it copied and carried out of the house before lunch. Her lawyer looked at the stack and smiled the kind of smile that said, this was going to be a clean fight. The third call was the hardest. Megan picked up the phone and dialed Donna, Brandon's mother. Donna had always treated Megan like the daughter she never had, and when Megan told her what she had found on that phone, the silence on the other end of the line lasted so long that Megan thought the call had dropped. When Donna finally spoke, her voice was low and steady, and she said only one thing. She said she would be at Megan's father's house by evening, and she was bringing her will. Donna and Frank had updated their estate documents 2 years prior, and Donna wanted Megan to have a copy of everything to make sure that no matter what happened in the divorce, Megan and those grandchildren would be protected. Brandon came home that night to a wife who had already dismantled the foundation of their marriage without him noticing a single crack. He kissed the kids goodnight, asked Megan how her day was, and climbed into bed beside her. She lay there in the dark, listening to him breathe, and counted the hours until she would never have to pretend again. This was not going to be a confrontation. This was going to be a reckoning. And Megan made sure they would not see it coming. The gathering was not a family dinner, though it was disguised as one. Megan had spent the better part of a week coordinating with the people who still had her back. And when the night finally arrived, every seat at that table was filled with someone who already knew the truth, except for the 2 people who deserved to choke on it. Patty, Nicole's mother, had taken the discovery harder than anyone expected. This was a woman who had stood beside Megan's mother at her wedding, who had held newborn Megan in the hospital the day she was born, who had promised a dying woman that she would always look after her daughter. When Megan called and told her what Nicole had done, Patty did not cry. She went quiet in that terrifying way that only mothers of a certain generation can. The kind of silence that means someone is about to be erased from the family tree with surgical precision. Carl, Nicole's father, had simply walked out of the room when Patty told him. He came back 20 minutes later with red eyes and said he had nothing to add. But Patty had plenty to add, and she spent the next several days building her weapon. She went through every screenshot Megan had pulled from Brandon's phone and organized them into a slideshow. She arranged the messages chronologically, highlighted the worst of them, and loaded the entire thing onto her laptop with the calm efficiency of a prosecutor preparing closing arguments. The setup was simple. Donna and Frank invited Brandon under the pretense of a family dinner at their home. Patty and Carl brought Nicole, telling her it was a casual get-together to lift everyone's spirits during a hard season. When both of them walked through that front door and saw each other sitting in the same room surrounded by every parent who had ever loved them, the color drained from their faces at the exact same speed. Patty opened the laptop without a word. She turned the screen toward the table and pressed play, and the room watched in silence as months of betrayal scrolled across the display in blue and gray text bubbles. Every lie, every arrangement, every mocking remark about the pregnant woman who had trusted both of them with her entire heart was now projected for the people who raised them to see. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. The only sound was the soft click of the slideshow, advancing from one screenshot to the next, each one worse than the last. When it was over, Brandon lunged across the table toward Nicole, and Frank had to grab him by the shoulders and force him back into his chair. Brandon was not angry at himself. He was angry at Nicole, as if she had been the one to pull the curtain back, as if this was somehow her fault and not the thing they had built together in the dark. Nicole sat frozen with her jaw tight and her eyes locked on the floor, and she did not say a single word while her parents looked at her like they were staring at a stranger. Patty and Carl stood up from the table that night and told Nicole she was no longer welcome in their home. Carl did not raise his voice. He simply told his daughter that she had broken something that could not be fixed, and then he took Patty by the hand and walked out the front door. Nicole screamed after them, but the door was already closed. What followed was a flood. Brandon's phone calls started before Megan even made it back to her father's house, and they did not stop for days. He cycled through every emotional weapon he had. First came the begging, long voicemails soaked in tears where he swore Nicole meant nothing, where he promised it was a mistake, where he said he would spend the rest of his life making it right if Megan would just pick up the phone. Then came the threats, sharp and venomous, accusing her of turning his family against him, telling her she had no right to take the children, warning her that she would regret this. And then the begging came back again, softer this time, more desperate, like a man who had finally realized that the walls were closing in and no one was coming to pull him out. Megan's lawyer had told her not to block him. Every message, every voicemail, every unhinged text that swung between love and fury was ammunition, and Megan saved every single one without responding to a word of it. Nicole was no quieter. She blew up Megan's phone with messages demanding that Megan fix what she had broken, as if the explosion had been Megan's fault for striking the match instead of theirs for building the bomb. Nicole claimed Brandon was the love of her life, that Megan had stolen him, that she had introduced them all those years ago and Brandon had never truly belonged to Megan in the first place. She blamed Megan for turning Patty and Carl against her, called her selfish, called her vindictive, and when none of that landed, she told Megan that Brandon had only ever stayed for the kids and never loved her at all. Megan read every word and did not respond to a single one. She put the phone face down on the nightstand and stared at the ceiling of her childhood bedroom in her father's house, and for the first time since that morning with the alarm, she let herself cry. Megan moved into her father's house the same week with 2 suitcases, a trash bag full of toys, and 2 children who did not yet understand why they were sleeping in a different bed. Her father's health had declined enough that he needed help with daily tasks, and Megan folded herself into the role of both caretaker and refugee without complaint. She set up the kids in her old bedroom, the one with the faded blue walls and the pencil marks on the doorframe where her father had measured her height every birthday until she turned 16. The dog he had given her for her 18th birthday, old and gray now, wagged its tail when the children ran through the front door, and for a brief moment the house felt like it had a pulse again. Ethan arrived 2 days later with a duffel bag and 3 weeks of saved leave from work. He did not ask permission. He simply called Megan and told her he was coming, and when she opened the door, he was already carrying groceries up the porch steps. Ethan was Nicole's older brother, but he had made it clear from the moment the truth came out that blood did not outweigh conscience. He had watched his sister destroy something sacred, and he had chosen the side of the woman who had been destroyed, rather than the one who had done the destroying. He changed light bulbs, assembled a toddler bed, fixed the leaking faucet in the bathroom that Megan's father had been meaning to get to for months, and he never once made Megan feel like she owed him anything for it. Brandon's messages had not stopped, but they had shifted into something darker. On the 4th day after Megan left, he sent a text threatening to call the police and report her for kidnapping his children. Megan's lawyer had anticipated this and had already filed the appropriate paperwork to establish temporary residence at her father's address, so the threat was hollow, but it still landed like a punch to the chest. Reading the word kidnapping attached to the children she had carried inside her body and raised with her own 2 hands made her grip the edge of the kitchen counter until her knuckles turned white. Then came the message that changed everything. Buried between another round of desperate apologies and hollow promises, Brandon typed 6 words that Megan read 3 times before the meaning fully registered. He told her that Nicole was not the only one. He did not elaborate. He did not name anyone. He simply tossed the confession into the stream of text like a grenade and moved on to begging her again in the very next message, as if admitting to additional betrayals was just another card to play in his endless negotiation to win her back. Megan forwarded the screenshot to her lawyer within 30 seconds. Her attorney responded with a single line telling her that this was exactly what they needed and to keep him talking. So Megan did nothing. She did not react, did not respond, did not give Brandon the satisfaction of knowing that his words had hit their target. She simply saved the message and added it to the growing file that would one day sit on a judge's desk. The custody question had been weighing on her since the first night she left. Megan was not a vindictive person by nature, and her initial instinct had been to offer Brandon a fair split, 50-50, because she believed that her children deserved a father, even if that father had failed as a husband. But the threats had rewritten that calculation entirely. A man who screamed kidnapping at the mother of his children, who admitted to multiple affairs in a text message and then pivoted to begging in the same breath, was not a man she trusted alone with the people she loved most in this world. Megan told her lawyer to pursue full custody with supervised visitation, and her lawyer did not hesitate before agreeing that it was the right call. The days after that settled into a strange rhythm. Mornings belonged to the children, cereal bowls and cartoons and arguments over whose turn it was to feed the dog. Afternoons belonged to her father, sitting beside his recliner and reading to him from the sports section, because he could no longer hold the paper steady in his hands. His memory was slipping now, coming and going like a radio signal in a storm, and some days he looked at Megan with a flicker of confusion, before his eyes softened, and he remembered whose face he was looking at. Those moments were the ones that nearly broke her, worse than anything Brandon had done, because there was no lawyer and no legal document that could fix what was happening inside her father's mind. Evenings belonged to quiet. After the kids went to bed, Megan would sit on the couch in the living room and stare at the television without really watching it, letting the noise fill the spaces in her head where the thoughts were too loud. One night, about a week after he arrived, Ethan came downstairs with a PlayStation under his arm and 2 controllers in his hand. He set it up without asking, loaded Call of Duty, handed her a controller, and sat down on the other end of the couch. They played for 3 hours without talking about anything real, just yelling at the screen and laughing when one of them got eliminated in the most ridiculous way possible. And for the first time in longer than Megan could remember, her chest did not feel like it was being squeezed by invisible hands. When they finally turned the game off and the house went silent, Ethan looked at her and said something she was not expecting. He told her he had feelings for her, that he had carried them since they were teenagers, and that he was telling her now not because he wanted anything in return, but because he was tired of pretending. He told her not to respond, not to think about it, not to let it add weight to a plate that was already breaking. He just needed her to know, and then he picked up the controllers and went upstairs without another word. Megan sat in the dark for a long time after that, her hand resting on her belly where the baby kicked against her palm, and she thought about how strange it was that honesty could feel so different depending on who it came from. Brandon found the post on a Wednesday afternoon. Megan had written about her situation on an online forum weeks earlier under a fake name, changing enough details to protect the people involved, and for a while it had stayed buried in the noise of strangers sharing their worst days. But someone who knew Brandon had connected the dots and sent him the link, and within an hour he was calling her phone with a voice that sounded nothing like the man who had been threatening her just days before. He asked her one question. He asked if she was going through with the divorce. Megan did not hesitate, did not soften her voice, did not leave a crack in the door for him to wedge his foot into. She said yes. Brandon apologized for losing his temper in the days after the confrontation, for the threats about the police, for the ugly words he had thrown at her through a screen, because he did not have the courage to say them to her face. He asked if there was any hope of reconciliation, any path back to the life they had shared, and Megan told him there was not. She said it the way someone closes a book they have finished reading, without anger, but without any intention of opening it again. They spoke briefly about the children, and for the first time since everything collapsed, the conversation stayed level. Brandon agreed to supervised visitation without argument, which surprised Megan until she realized that the fight had simply gone out of him. He was not surrendering because he had found remorse. He was surrendering because he had run out of people willing to stand on his side of the room, and a man with no allies eventually stopped swinging. Nicole made one last attempt to reach Megan the following week. She sent a message so long it had to be split across multiple texts, and the core of it was blame. She blamed Megan for introducing her to Brandon in the first place, for being too blind to see what was happening, for turning Patty and Carl against their own daughter, as if Megan had held a gun to their heads instead of simply telling the truth. She called Megan selfish, jealous, and controlling, and she finished by saying that Brandon had never truly loved Megan and had only stayed because of the children. Megan read every word the same way she might read the ingredients on the back of a cereal box, with mild attention and absolutely no emotional investment. And then she put the phone down and went to help her 4-year-old with a puzzle on the living room floor. Megan did not bother responding because there was nothing left to say to a woman who had stood in her kitchen and called her sister while sleeping with her husband in the same week. Nicole had made her choices, and those choices had cost her everything: her parents, her brother, the only real friend she had ever had, and Megan felt no obligation to help her carry the weight of that wreckage. Whatever Nicole built from here, she would build alone. Ethan did not take back his confession. He did not bring it up again either, and the two of them settled into a rhythm that asked nothing of each other beyond presence. He helped the kids with breakfast, drove them to appointments, and kept the house running while Megan focused on her father, whose condition had taken a sharp turn downward. The hospital admitted him on a Friday evening after he collapsed in the hallway, trying to reach the bathroom on his own, and the doctors told Megan there was no discharge date on the horizon. She sat beside his bed that night, holding his hand while he drifted in and out of sleep, and when he opened his eyes and looked at her with full clarity for the first time in weeks, he squeezed her fingers and told her she was the strongest person he had ever known. Megan held her breath so she would not cry in front of him and squeezed back twice, which was something they had done since she was a little girl, their silent code for "I love you more." The weeks that followed were not easy, but they were steady. Megan's lawyer continued building the case with the precision of someone who had done this 100 times before. The children were adjusting better than Megan had expected, though her oldest had started asking questions that no 7-year-old should have to ask, and Megan had scheduled a family therapy session to make sure she handled those answers in a way that would not leave marks. The baby was healthy and growing on schedule, kicking harder every day as if reminding Megan that new life does not wait for old pain to finish. One Thursday afternoon, Megan got a call from the community center telling her that her oldest had made the competitive swim team. She hung up the phone and stood in the kitchen for a moment, letting the news settle into her chest, and she realized it was the first time in weeks that she had smiled without forcing it. That evening, she told her father the news during visiting hours, and even though his memory had been unreliable for months, his face broke into a grin, and he said he always knew that kid had it in them. Megan drove home that night with the windows down and the radio off. The air smelled like cut grass and coming rain, and the baby shifted inside her as if settling in for the ride. She did not know what the next months would bring. She did not know if her father would meet his newest grandchild, or if the divorce would turn ugly, or if she would ever be ready to think about what Ethan had said to her on that couch. But she knew one thing with a certainty that sat in her bones like iron. She had been handed the worst hand a person could draw, betrayed by the man she married and the friend she loved, pregnant and jobless and watching her father disappear in front of her eyes, and she had not folded. She had not begged, had not crumbled, had not let anyone else define the ending of her story. Whatever came next, she would face it the same way she had met everything else, standing up, eyes open, with her children behind her, and her father's stubborn heart beating somewhere inside her chest. Some betrayals destroy you. Some rebuild you into someone unbreakable. Megan lost a husband. She lost a friend. But she found something far more important. She found out how strong she really was. And this time, no one else would be writing the ending of her story. If this story made you feel something, hit that like button, drop a comment telling us what you would have done if you found that message on your partner's phone, and subscribe to Sinner Stories so you never miss a new video.